people coming in. All right. It's 6:33, so I'm sure more people will be joining, but I think we should go ahead and get started. I'm going to take this screen off. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out to this event tonight, hosted by Delaware County Historical Society. We're really excited to have some awesome speakers to talk about the Delco accent and the story behind that. And tonight will be our host moderator, I guess we're calling him Stefan Roots. He is a board member of Delaware County Historical Society. He's a man about Chester. He's also a writer for Chester Matters blog. Stefan, feel free to add anything I might have missed about what makes you so special. But you have become our host for these events, and we're so grateful. And I'll pass it off to you. Thanks. I think you're muted, Stefan.
Well, I'm not muted now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another of these exciting presentations virtually brought to you by the Delaware County Historical Society. My name is Stefan Roots. I'm going to be your host and moderator tonight, and you are in for a treat tonight. So we've been sitting back in the green room. Is that what we would call the green room, if it's even if it's virtual? And we've just been chatting and getting to know each other, and I'm almost sorry you guys couldn't have joined us there. So we're going to bring that whole energy that we had back there forward. I'm not going to waste any time because nobody wants to hear from me. We want to hear from our two guests. Our first guest, well, I shouldn't say first because you guys are together. So guest A is Suzanne Selby. She's the dialect coach for that show that many of you have watched, Mare of Easttown, and also Silver Linings Playbook. Now, one of the things that's going to happen here is I've got to read some bios, and they've got some big words, so we're going to test my linguist ability. Sociolinguistics professor Josef Fruehwald is also with us. So did I get all that right so far?
That's right so far.
Okay, really good. I can't see all of the people out there, but I think close to 200 people signed up for this event. Now we've had, I think, over 100 at one of our earlier events, but this one has just blown the roof off. So obviously you guys are interested about something. Is it that you're curious why you talk the way you talk? Is it because when you travel, people say like, where are you from? Or is it because, well, maybe you like the TV show? I'm curious. At some point, we're going to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. So I'm really, in those questions, I want some of you to tell me what really interested you. Now we'll do a survey that we'll send later where you can really express yourself. But I'm really curious why everybody's so curious about this topic. Now, again, like I said, I'm going to get out your way. I think I got to give some bios first. So let's start with Suzanne. She's a dialect coach. And hi. I'm supposed to read, but you can say hi. Go ahead. Say hi to everybody so they can hear your voice.
I'm Suzanne Selby.
And she has a lot to say. I can tell you that right now. She's a dialect coach and actor, most recently known for her work on Mare of Easttown and Silver Linings Playbook. A native of Bucks County, Suzanne has a passion for learning about people and their collective voice. She has performed in numerous productions in her over 25 years of acting, teaching, and coaching. We're excited to have Suzanne join us tonight to share her experience as a dialect coach and training actors on the unique Delco accent. Now, if we live in Delco, we know we don't have an accent. It's only people outside of Delco who have identified us as having our own accent. So that's a lot of what we're going to learn about tonight. And then we have one of these smart guys, a professor, Josef Fruehwald. He's a professor of linguistics at the University of Kentucky. Joseph, a native of Philadelphia, earned his PhD in linguistics from the University of Pennsylvania, where he did a published study on 100 years of language change in Philadelphia. He's currently a lecturer in social linguistics. See how slowly I have to drag that out just so I get it right?
It sounded good.
It did? Okay. He has interest in variations and changes, phonetics, and phonology. Is that a word?
Yes.
Okay, great. Joseph will be digging into the evolution of dialect in the region throughout the 20th century and the features that make our accent so distinct.
I'm going to interject real quick. So I forgot to mention in the beginning that we are going to hold comments until the end. We're going to take comments from the chat, but feel free to share in the chat. Like Stefan was just asking, why did you sign up for this? What interests you the most about the accent? So feel free to share in the chat and utilize that. And then if you do want to or need to come off mute to ask your questions, we will do that after the chat questions. So I just wanted to mention that. Back to you.
So before we get with our guest, I got to do like a little commercial, and I want to thank our director, our executive director, Lori Grant, for putting this whole thing together. And I have to thank our phenomenal board of directors. We've got the smartest, most sincere, interested, passionate, engaged board of directors any organization can have. So we're really happy. I'm not going to name them all because we'd be here all night, well, maybe 5 minutes. But again, it's not about us. It's about you guys, the audience. We're going to get right into it. We're going to do something a little different. I guess etiquette usually says ladies first, but not tonight. We're going to start with the gentleman.
Nice.
Professor Freuwald, I'm going to allow you to take the show. I think you have a few things to say. You're going to share your screen. I might ask you some questions when it's over, but for now, I'm getting out the way. The show is yours. Take it over.
All right. Thank you, Stefan. Hello, everybody. I'm, like Stefan introduced me, Josef Fruehwald, local to the area. And I think I need to take things, you should never start a talk with an apology. But I have to apologize because what I'm going to be talking about, my area of expertise has been quite specifically accents in Philadelphia, where I'm from. Not Delco so much in particular, but there's this great quote from R. Tucker Whitney, who wrote this paper, Notes on the Philadelphia Dialect. And he said in 1944, to tell the truth, I think that the heart and center of this dialect was originally and still is a few miles to the south in the eastern part of Delaware County. For it seems to me that the special peculiarities in pronunciation and idiom appear in their most extreme form in Delaware County. So while the research I've done, the data I have, the sort of graphs and plots and descriptions I'm going to be giving you are about the city of Philadelphia. That's where my data is from. That's where my research has been based. Most or all of it will be relevant and transfer over to Delco. An interesting thing, 1944, this is the earliest description or published description I know of accents in the area. People often want to know, is the way we speak because of who founded the area? Is it all features that have been imported from England or properties of Irish English, or because of all the Italian immigration? And while I wouldn't say no, a thing to keep in mind is that the recent past is really important, and that the Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley accent as it exists today is really different from what it sounded like in the year 1900. It is different from how it sounded in 1950. And when in like 40 years, they do a reboot of Mare of Easttown, they're gonna have to, somebody's gonna have to learn all again what it sounds like right now. So I want to talk first a little bit about what is an accent, because we have some sort of idea that we know an accent is what we hear it. But what I'd like to get across to you with this talk, with my little presentation, is that an accent is a particular way of speaking, and speaking is a very special kind of performance, physical performance. Now you might be thinking to yourself, you're not a ballerina or a hip hop dancer. I certainly couldn't hold myself up on my elbow like that gentleman is. But when you're speaking, you are coordinating the activities of your vocal apparatus in very complicated and coordinated ways. You're not even aware of it, but you are. And different accents are just slightly different ways, and it can be really slight in terms of the physical performance of doing that physical performance with your vocal apparatus. So just to get your minds working a little bit, I won't hear you all, I might hear some of you, I won't hear you all do this, but I really want you to actually say out loud where you're sitting at home to say E. Okay. So you've said E, and when you do that, you should think about what you're feeling in your mouth, your teeth, your jaw, your lips. Your jaw is perhaps together or just very slightly apart. You might be spreading your lips. You'll feel your tongue body up really far in front of your mouth, perhaps bracing against your top teeth, your top row of teeth. E. This is why when we're taking pictures, we tell people, say cheese, because when you say E, it brings apart your lips, it brings your teeth together, it shows a kind of smile, cheese. It makes some kind of sense. Now, say ah for me. You'll feel some very different kinds of things. Your jaw is down. Your tongue body is low and back. And it's your lips are apart. This is why when we say, when you're going for a group picture, you don't say taco, because you'd all look like this. But when you go to the doctor and they want to look down your throat, they say ah, because it opens up your jaw and pushes your tongue down and out of the way so they can see all the way back down your throat, right? And it's in this is a little graph of what that kind of looks like, right? So when you're saying E, your tongue is up and front, like E. And when you're saying ah, your tongue is down and back. And it's in this space. And we think when we're doing linguistics, when we're doing phonetics, when we're doing accents, we think about things in terms of this vowel space between E and ah, and every infinitesimal little difference in between is where the sounds you make every day and the little differences between, you know, if you sound like somebody from Delco saying on, or you sound like somebody from further north saying on. It's these very little differences that make up the accent that we're listening to. And the fun thing is, what makes my research possible is that if we simply have a recording of you speaking or a person speaking, we can run that through our fancy computer systems and roughly reconstruct where in your mouth your tongue was while you were speaking, which means people who are distant, who we don't get to meet, who have passed away, if we have a recording of their voice, we can reconstruct what they were physically doing while they were speaking. Now, I've been involved in developing some of the computer software that makes this possible for us. The technology is actually really old. It goes back to the 1940s, but we're doing fancy schmancy stuff. But it's this fact, and that if we have a whole collection of recordings of people, that makes it possible for me to do my research, to look at how pronunciations have changed over time, because we analyze these recordings and look, what are the minute little changes in articulation of how people are moving their tongues around, and how's that changed over time. which is what allowed us to write this paper. 100 years of sound change in Philadelphia, linear incrementation reversal, and my little image is in the way, reanalysis. Okay. I'm not going to read this whole abstract. This is just to get the point across that we published a paper. This was a paper I was lucky to co-author with William Labov, a sociolinguist at University of Pennsylvania. If there's anybody who knows, there's a handful of people who know more about the Philadelphia accent than me, and he's top of the list. So it was great to work with him. He was my PhD supervisor. 100 years of language change. What did we look at in this paper? Well, it's based on 40 years of fieldwork data. From 1973 to 2013, groups of graduate students at UPenn were going out and interviewing people all over Philadelphia. There was a strong concentration in South Philly, but that's what was happening. We have in that data set 100 years of people. So if you look at the year people were born and sort of plot out how many people were in the data set, the oldest person was born in 1889. And the data we analyzed, and some of the data I'm going to be showing you, is based on 307 white Philadelphian speakers. So what did we find? In this paper, we found something that's been known for a while, that Philadelphia is the northernmost southern city. There's a mixture of things in Philly and Delco as well that are southern kinds of features. I'll talk about one of them, but another one you could think about is what if you say both or both. In Philly, Delco, we kind of say both, which is more of a southern feature. And now that, or in Philly, we say on. I've logged on to the computer, versus a more northern pronunciation, like I've logged on to the computer. But there's a mixture of features in Philly, and it makes some sense that we'd be the northernmost southern city, because a lot of the settlement and colonization patterns of the American South and Midland flowed out of the Delaware Valley area. What we found in recent history was that a lot of these southern features that are markedly southern in Philadelphia were going the other way. We're beginning to reverse. Here's an example. Our pronunciation of the sound ow, as in cow, down, house, is more southern versus a pronunciation like cow, house, down. So when we say down, that's much more of a southern US pronunciation, but we found that trend reversing. Now, you can walk away with just that. I've got a graph. It wouldn't be a talk I'm giving if there wasn't some kind of data analysis presented. What I'm showing you is where the Philadelphia Delco owl lives in that E to ah space. E, ah, and down lives here. Ow, ow. And when I hit play, you're going to see how what I'm showing you here is how people were pronouncing that, men and women in 1900. When I hit play, you're going to see how this pronunciation changed over time. Slowly, women started developing this much more ow, 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 ow. Men were kind of lagging on this until about 1950, where women started retreating from this ow back to the ow pronunciation. So, and men were starting to get in on that as well. So we moved from, if I can get my controls just right, from a kind of down to a down to a down, and now starting to reverse again, down, down. So it became more and more and more southern, and then stopped around people born in 1950 and went the other way. Okay. A northern feature of Philadelphia is the sound I that shows up in some words like type, right, life, versus something that sounds like type, right, life. Pronouncing these words like type is a more northern kind of pronunciation. And what we found in our analysis is that this is again where that I pronunciation lives in the E to A space. I. This is somebody saying right. And when I hit play, you're going to see that I slowly and gradually turn into I. Right. Life. Type. This is a change that both men and women participated in at about the same degree, and it never reversed. The upshot here is I like making little animations, but the real upshot here is that we have these mixtures of southern and northern features in Philadelphia. That's one of the things that makes it a distinctive kind of accent. And the accent is always changing in time, as all accents are. And the particular changes that were happening in Philadelphia is that the southern features moved in one direction, then turned around, whereas the more northern features kept moving more and more, being like northern features. So where is the accent going? It's really hard to be a weatherman like that, trying to make predictions that way. But what's clear is that it's always changing, and that despite the fact that it sounds a particular way now, it's not going to stay still. And it's also not in any sense getting worse. It's not Philadelphia becoming, or Delco becoming, less Philadelphia or Delco. It's just shifting meanings of what sounding Philly or sounding Delco is. Okay, so that's what I've got to say to everybody. Let me stop my screen sharing.
Thank you. That was really interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was pretty fascinating. I'm sitting here listening. I didn't want you to stop. Kind of caught me off guard there.
Well, I had to keep it in time.
Yeah, so I've got a
Nice.
couple comments, couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the chat. You guys are pretty fascinating out there, already engaged, as I was hoping you'd be. Where can I start? I don't want to sound flip. I don't want to sound like you're doing something I've never heard of, because you are. So I'm going to ask the question this way. Why is what you do important?
Well, there's two things I throw out there. First, linguists have always been interested. It's interesting to linguists because linguists are interested in how language changes, right? We want to know how did we get French out of Latin? How did Latin turn into Spanish, French, Romanian, Italian? And the process by which that happened is going to be something really similar to exactly how we see the pronunciations of Philadelphia changing. It's just we're looking at a much narrower time frame of about 100 years versus like hundreds. But the other thing that's really important to keep in mind is that when it comes to language, people have a big sense that a difference is bad, or difference is deficit, or there's bad ways of talking. And I push back against that as much as I can, that there's no bad way to talk. There's no deficit to the way anybody talks. And the way people are complaining about how people are talking now, the language they're using now to do that complaining, people would have been complaining about 100 years ago. So in that sense, it's important also to try to nudge people away from using language as the means they want to discriminate against people.
So you'd say language accent distinguishes class in some senses. Us northern people, we're proper. Those people down south, well, sometimes we just feel, just because of the way they talk, that we put them in certain categories.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure, we're still working out, trying to figure out what motivated this sort of dialectal realignment of Philadelphia. But there's importantly nothing wrong with how people used to talk, and there's nothing wrong with how they're talking now.
One of your quotes that was matched up almost perfectly with one of the comments in the chat was, you said speaking is a physical performance. Someone in the chat said it's the choreography for the mouth.
Exactly.
I absolutely love that comparison. Now, being
Absolutely.
a Delco guy who grew up in a family that, migrated from the South, I imagine that adds a little more nuance to language. Can you speak on that just a little bit?
Sure. So people moving from one place to another always has a big effect, especially if it happens en masse. So sure, and especially it's also the case. I'm talking very much in generalizations. Not every person in Delco, in Philadelphia, is going to sound exactly the same. I'm kind of showing averages. So the particular way people are going to be speaking is going to come down to a lot about their personal biography, where their parents came from, how old were they when they moved to the new area, right? Were they really young, or was it after high school? I'm probably not going to start sounding like a Lexingtonian anytime soon, just because I moved here in my 30s. But also importantly, these language changes we're looking at can also happen strictly in a bubble. If nobody arrived or nobody left, it would still be changing. It doesn't need to be nudged by people moving to an area.
That's interesting, because as a college student living in Chester, but going to school in Villanova, so we're only 15 miles apart. So if I spent a semester at school, always at the beginning of the semester, the other students would say, "Huh? What do you say? Huh? What?
Yeah.
What?" And then I'd kind of catch on to the language in my environment. And then when I came home for break, it was the same concept. They're like, "What are you saying? Huh? What?" And then I had to kind of adjust for my friends at home.
Well, it's interesting you say that. My own story is, I went to Penn, and there's some kids at Penn from Philly, but not most people at Penn are from Philly. And it's when I went to Penn in my own city that I learned I had an accent, that people were like, "Huh? You said wooder? What's wooder? Is that some kind of mixed drink?" Yeah, but this experience is really common. And I'll actually, after I finished my PhD, William LeBove went on to work with other PhD students, looking at what they called the impact of higher education on local phonology. So some people change a lot when they go to college, some people don't. And why? And what influences that?
All right, thank you so much. We're going to move on, but the perfect segue will be what I picked up in your presentation, especially with the graph and the way sounds changed. It's amazing to me how you can speak all those different changes. That would have been really difficult for me to do. Now, Suzanne Sulby, she's a dialect coach, so she teaches these changes. So I'm sure she's an expert at this as well. Mare of Easttown. Everybody's excited about that show. I will say that I've watched only a couple episodes, but I couldn't get away from the hype of the show. It's so Delco. So I'm that guy who saw the skit on Saturday Night Live before I saw the episode. When I saw the first episode and I could match up the characters to the skit, then I went back to Saturday Night Live and it sort of caught on. So I'm going to let you take it away, because you were just so exciting in the green room that I know you're chomping at the bit to share with us. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me thank you all for having me here, and thanks to everyone at the Historical Society as I was trying to collect dialect samples from the local area that would fit the demographic of the people that I was working with. So thank you so much. Such a generous group of people, and what a beautiful place to visit. So there's that. And thank you, Joseph. I love listening to you. Thank you so much. So my experience is somewhat different, but a lot of the things overlap. I'm not looking at things throughout history, and I'm really not looking at it as much from an academic standpoint. I'm looking at how can I help these actors to portray these characters in as believable a way as possible without also getting in their way, right? So this is true for any acting job, right? So they have a multi-level obstacles, right? So they're taking somebody else's words and trying to make them mean something inside their own bodies, and with new costumes and new makeup and movement and all that kind of stuff. That's hard enough to take someone else's thoughts and viscerally make them your own, right? So then you add in trying to do that in a dialect, in an accent, right? So you have someone who's now got to say something even simple, like, you know, get in the car, we're going to the doctor, and they've got to, and come on, let's go. And they've got to say it in an accent. That's one part of the brain that makes you remember how your mouth's supposed to move. I call it geometry. Like, it's geometry. If you make a certain shape in your mouth, you're going to get a certain sound. It's like a musical instrument. If I say, oh, it's one sound, but if I say, oh, it's another sound, like Joseph was talking about, come on, come on. So that on is certain things happen in my face, as he was saying, that are always going to produce the same sound. And if it's not, it's something else. You know, maybe the back of the throat is too open, or maybe you're releasing your lips too late after you've finished using the sound. Like, so if you say aw, and then release your lips, it's not going to make the right sound. If your mouth is too open, it's not going to make the right sound. So there's all these very minute changes that I'm teaching. And then they have to get it so much into their neuromuscular memory that they can then give amazing performances. So that's basically what my job is. I sit down, I take the dialect samples. So if I'm looking at somebody who's a 70-year-old person, I'm going to try to get someone who is about 70 years old, of the same age group. It's not always possible, but of the same age group, of the same educational level, of the same socioeconomic group. And you'll find that people in the US are influenced by the number of touches they have outside of their neighborhood, but they're also very much influenced by who they identify with. One of the things that's very interesting about Delco is that people from Delco are like Delco strong, you know what I'm saying? So they're totally all about Delco. And what happens is you're belonging to that place. So your sounds, your accent is not as inclined to shift, because we're creatures of mimicry. We mimic in order to belong. So it's not just how many people, you know, whether you've got your master's degree from somewhere, it's also who you identify with. For the last show that I was on, the Delco accent, I interviewed 5 people from the same family, right? So the mom had a certain accent. She did not say, oh, she was like, I have 4 sons, and I babysit for them on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. One of her sons said, you know, hi, you know, I'm a police officer and I work on Baltimore Pike, and I take out, you know, I could take my wife out to dinner and we have a great time. And then, you know, 3 different levels of accent until you got to the 4th brother, who was, all 4 were college educated. All 4 went to like Villanova local schools. The 4th brother had moved away, didn't have very much of the accent, but sort of still had that onset that's kind of in the front of the face, that's a little bit more energetic, and said a couple words that were like, oh, okay, that's a little Delco, or maybe an L would would come in there as a sound that I could identify. So I don't know if that's too much information, but that's basically what I do. And do you have any questions for me that you'd like me to answer, or should I
do
just
have
keep
some
talking? Because I could talk for a long time.
All right, let's break it up with the questions, but we still want to hear you talk.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to go to what I saw from Mare of Easttown. Right.
Mhm. Okay.
So I was watching it with my wife, and we had two different perspectives as we were watching it. So
Mhm.
I'm just listening for that Delco accent, which is really hard to pick up if you're a Delco guy. So
Right.
I'm really being deliberate here. So again, this is all from the first episode. The first
Mhm.
thing that caught my ear was the phrase smatter.
What's the matter?
Yeah,
Smatter.
It was
Smatter.
What's the matter? So
Yeah,
when I heard
smatter.
smatter, I just paused. That's it. So now I'm grooving. I said, oh, I'm gonna pick up some more here. And then it was a miss. There was that little kid who said creek. I said, oh no, that's not a Delco kid, because he would have said crick.
Right. Well, this is the question. Like, is it a movie? Is it a television show? Or is it about an accent?
Mhm.
So it's not about the accent. The accent is one brushstroke. So if you look at any single thing on television that is an accent-oriented show, if you go in looking for the mistake, you're going to be disappointed, because you're going to find mistakes, and there's always somebody saying, I'm out because they said that. But let me point something out to you. If it is a named place, it's a creek. If it's the creek in your backyard, it's a creek. So that's why he said creek,
That's why
because
she's the
it's a
expert.
named creek. So if it's a named place, it's a creek. If it's a little thing in your backyard, it's a creek, down a creek. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things that I caution people about. Like don't go into it looking for everybody to sound like your Uncle Jimmy and your Aunt Mary Pat. Like, it's just it's the whole melding of the experience and what gets caught on the day, because it's an incredibly complicated process to make a movie. You might have 40 people in the space that you're in, and all that you guys see is like the two people in the scene sitting down, and they are doing what they can do in that moment. They're creating that within the constraints of what a storytelling is in the visual medium. So I encourage people to just enjoy it, not sit and look for mistakes. So what else?
Well,
Any other questions?
no, I'm just glad I was only in that space for that one episode. Now it'll
Okay.
never happen again. But
Stefan, could I ask you a question?
let me do this one though, because I hope you're not
Okay,
lying.
that's fine.
I hope you're not lying to me, because I heard that one next. But go ahead.
Was your experience watching Mare of Easttown that there's no accents in the show? They all just sound normal.
Yes, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
love that.
Without a
That's
doubt.
great.
Without a doubt. It was a struggle to pull anything out.
That's great.
Right.
Good job, Suzanne.
Thanks. So I'll tell you a little story about when I first showed. The same is true for Silver Linings Playbook and the Philadelphia samples that I got from South Philly. When I first offer these kinds of accents up to people, they are taken aback. They're like, I don't know how to do that, because in part, it's also like the placement of the sound. It's not just changing a pronunciation, right? So it's, the sound comes farther forward in the front of the face, and there's some sort of thing that lands right here underneath your nose, like right underneath your sinus cavity. And it's people are like, how does that even happen? But once you get it, it's like learning choreography. You fall into a sweet spot, and that's the place to be able to play. I think it's also a window into a type of people. The production of Mare of Easttown was so successful, not at all because of the accents. That was just one little tiny thing. But moreover, it was successful because of the great writing, and the man that wrote it is from the area. He grew up in Delaware County. He insisted that the whole location basically be part of the character and part of the story. So when you're, coming down some of those little hills and you're coming into some of the locations that you guys all recognize, and the people that are walking down the street, and the people that are, the way people are dressed, the way people care for themselves, it's all part of the storytelling. And the rest of it should recede a little bit and just draw you in, So.
Whatever got you into doing this in the first place, becoming a dialect coach? Because it doesn't appear to be a profession that has a direct path.
Well, no, you can go to become a dialect coach either through a linguistics background like Joseph, or you can become a dialect coach typically as coming through an acting background. That's how I ended up in it. So sometimes for me, I get really frustrated because I don't have the linguistics background for some of the rules. Like if I had known Joseph, I would have called Joseph and said, okay, what's the rule for ah? And he would have said, okay, if it's followed by a double S or a double consonant, it will be blah, blah, blah. But so for me, I had to sit down because it's not written down anywhere, and honestly, I reached out to, the local universities, and there was no one who was really accessible for me to get this information from. And it's just tedious, so you sit down and you're like listening, okay, let me listen to every single ah sound that these 10 people are saying. So sometimes people say, ask, I'm going to ask him. Somebody else might say van instead of van. And so van is one of those words that can be van, or it can be van, or it can be van. And another word can be, married or parents instead of parents. It's, that is a slightly different sound, but it's not as open. So you have these really picayune little things that will, it's not just the O. If somebody didn't use home or Villanova, they would still be identifiable as being from the area. So that's what actually makes it sound more fully authentic, rather than just, I'm going to go down the street and see the Eagles play and we're going to get a hoagie and a Coke. You know what I'm saying? That's just a cliche, And so it's a matter of, oh, sorry, I got off topic. So how did I get into it? I was good at voice and speech, and I was good at doing voices, and I was good at doing accents. And then I became a teaching assistant at the University of the Arts in my sophomore year because, which is pretty like low year to become a teaching assistant. And then by my junior and senior year, I had basically taken over the classes. And then I taught there for a decade. And as you begin to do that, you accumulate information and you start to figure stuff out. Somebody says, oh, we're doing this thing and it needs to be in received pronunciation. And I go, okay, what's received pronunciation? Let me figure that out. That's a different accent. That's a British accent, right? So, or it's in, North Country, England, or it's Irish. And so then you start understanding that, okay, in Ireland, we might say book, but they might say ooh in that spot. So that might be book, right? And then, oh, how do they use consonants? Do they add a little bit more air to it, like right? So the sound might be forward in the face. So there's all these different little things that you begin to start picking up, and then you're the person that they call, and then you have to start showing up and delivering, and then you do a lot of research. So it's creative and incorporates research.
So the research piece is where Joseph and his skills come in. And you were saying that it's tough to find guys like him because I'm sure they're not available everywhere you go.
Teaching his university classes, and some of it, there's a lot that's online. Like there's a thing called IDEA, the International Dialects of English Archives. But again, when you're going through something like that, they have tons of recordings. I have a friend who started a vlog. So she wants video recordings of accents, because really, as Josef said, it's a movement. It's like dance. We speak with the whole body. We don't think we do, but we do. I also teach something called Linklater voice work, which really delves into the connection of the body to the voice. In addition, when you're connecting to acting, emotions are motion. Even though it's small movements, it's motion. So it's all about getting the body involved and then utilizing all of this research to support and to see where you can get to. Like he said, there's no right or wrong. If you looked on your block, there would be all different kinds of accents, and there would be people from other places there would be people with no accent at all. And so there's no right or wrong. In storytelling, you have to decide. Like if you've decided you're doing a Delco accent, and then all of a sudden somebody has like an accent from Alabama, that feels like it's going to be part of the story. Like, why is this guy from Alabama? Is he an outsider? So then you have to decide who's going to have what kind of accent, where and when. But there's no right or wrong to me about that.
Now, both of you have brought up a lot of words that I hadn't considered, the nuances and differences, but the one word that seems to be I don't know what to call it, the measuring stick to your accent is, and I'm going to say it the way I say it, water.
Yeah.
So when I think about it, it's WARTER. I'm sure I got that spelled wrong in my second grade, third grade class, because I'm always adding that R. And then I look at 2SP, the beer brewery here in the area, and on their artwork, they've got WUDDER or UR. And I'm talking to the guy and I'm like, well, what's water? And he says, you don't know what water is? And I said, of course I know what water is. And then we just looked at each other and laughed, because when I saw it spelled, I didn't get it. When he pronounced it just as it was spelled, I got it. And then it all came together. When I lived in Denver, it's water, almost how it's spelled. So what is it with that word that seems to be a defining symbol to how people speak in their area?
Well, you're absolutely right. So if you want a technical word, you were looking for a word, it's a shibboleth.
Shibboleth. Fantastic.
It's a word where you hear somebody say it and you just need that one word and and water's absolutely that. And the question is how did it get to be so different from what it's like other places? Other places, it's maybe a water or a water.
Right.
And I had to change it up how I would, because, I had friends who went on a road trip in college and they went to Boston and they were broke. So they were at a restaurant and they said, no, we'll just have water. And the waitress said, okay, and came back a few minutes later saying, the bartender doesn't know how to make water. Because really she thought it was some other kind of drink they're asking for. And I had to change it up a lot while I was living in Scotland, because if I said water, that's so different from how they say it in a few different ways that I just would not get served. But yeah, so my take is that we don't have a definitive history of water.
Right.
I should maybe try working on it. But if there's anything there, it's going to be the W at the beginning of the word. W, because the w sound is a lot like the oo sound. If you think about the shape your mouth makes, wa, oo, ooh, wa. It's both involves your lips doing similar kinds of things and your tongue doing similar kinds of things. Which then, and I don't know why it happened in Philly and not everywhere. That's a big mystery in when you study language change. Why did it happen here and not everywhere?
Right.
But that w starts having a pressure on the following aw sound, pulling it up so that it starts sounding more similar to the w, water. And there's things like that happen. I've been, I'm still relatively new here to Lexington, getting my feet on the ground, my ears on the ground. But I hear a lot of for people saying if they're going to wander, they'll say I'm going to wonder.
Yeah.
Or even instead of saying I'm going to wash, I'm going to wash. So I'm hearing that a bit, and it's the same kind of thing playing out, although it hasn't. I don't know at what point people started deciding to like put water on coffee mugs and like and like refrigerator magnets, that we decided not only do we say it that way, we recognize that we say it that way, and it's special about us. That's even a whole other process, but yeah.
Well, frozen water got me in trouble one time.
Frozen water?
Frozen water. So
Water ice?
Well, no, it was my mother at an outing, and she told me to go ask her sister, my aunt, for the ice tray. So I went inside. I said, Aunt, my mom wants the ice tray. And my aunt was like, what are you talking about, boy? There's ice in the bucket outside. I said, look, I'm not going back outside without the ice tray. So she goes in the freezer. She gives me the ice tray. I give it to my mom. Now my mom's ready to bang me upside the head because what she really was asking for was the ash tray.
Oh,
Ash
yes.
tray.
Ash.
But she said ice, almost
Ice.
like ice
Yes.
with an H on the
Ice
end.
tray.
Yes.
Does she have more
Yeah.
of a Southern accent?
But she wasn't from the South.
Well,
But
when
she
you
did-
look at the African American, if I don't know if she's African American as well,
She
but
is.
if you look at the southern to northern migration, from the south to north, there's been two major migrations. One early on, and one I think it was in the 1960s and 70s. So as I was doing research, I was also talking to a lot of African American men and women in Chester, in and around Chester, and they talked about that. Like my grandfather was from South Carolina, so they had more Southern influences perhaps than somebody else in another location. And they ended up in Chester because Chester had a huge port. So there was a lot of work. So that's how they ended up. They were looking for work for the most part. So that could be a Southern thing. Can I add on to the daughter thing?
Please.
So daughter, right? So that thing of the W, daughter is not exactly the same, but it is. I found in doing the research and watching people as they were talking, they would. We have this weird thing where we have really robust use of our lips in certain sounds, and then like really sloppy, super sloppy, or really robust onset for consonant sounds, and then places where there's just no consonants at all, where someone will say everybody, or they'll say, and that's the way you do it, and so a lot of consonants are gone, and then there's other things where someone will say both, like, and the B is like little extra. So it's just very interesting. And I think it's tells about a personality. So a cultural personality. I'm sure, Joseph, you could probably talk a little bit more about that as you look at how and why people speak the way they do and what it says about them. It's very interesting.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when he said it's a lot about how people identify.
Yeah.
So actually, my friends were doing this research on the effect of higher education on Philadelphian accents, and they were finding people were not doing that, what you mentioned before, that distinctive thing, right? So I'll say last and pass. But hammer, those kinds of things.
Yes, exactly. Hammer's one I didn't even notice.
Hammer. Yeah, hammer. Well, it's changing up. It's all changing up now, right? Right under our feet. But I said to my friends, I don't know, going to Penn didn't have that effect on me. And they said, okay, but you studied linguistics and got like hyper proud of your accent. So
Exactly.
duh. Yeah. 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 Which is another reason, and Stephanie asked, like, what's important about what you do, why I like doing this kind of thing, to try to engender some accent pride, because it's for anybody. Because how you speak is a really indelible part of like who you are and how you want to appear to the world. And I like it when people feel like they can do it proudly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I actually am looking at first of all, thanks for the info from the Great Migration. Somebody said it was from 1900 to 1970, no interruptions. Thank you so much. Somebody else, I mean, there's just so many good questions in here. Somebody asked, and maybe you would want to talk about this, Joseph, about the cadence and rhythms of the local. I mean, I could speak to it, but I think maybe you have more specificity about it.
Well, as far as cadence and rhythms, okay, so this is a funny thing. I've got a lot of general knowledge, but then other things get very specialized. So like specific little pronunciation things, but larger rhythm things are not my area of specialty.
Mhm.
So, and I haven't had to sit down and listen for every little thing, especially thinking about particular lines. I guess this question I had for you: are you going word by word, or are you trying to get people into a pattern so that they know how they do it when they encounter?
So when I'm teaching, and somebody else asked for two questions. One is, Aunt Mary Pat captured the true Delco. Aunt Mary Pat is Delco. Come on. And anyway, I love her. Yeah, in many ways she does. She gets the most intense part of it, and then also the actual sound. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at first I'm saying to people, okay, let's look at the oo sounds. And I list all of the sounds, oo, oh, all the way through, because, like I'm going through and breaking them down. And then we're saying, okay, but does that hold true in the context of the sentence? So if you're going to say, I'm going to go down to the store and get a Coke, right? Mm-hmm. I'm working with them and saying, I'm gonna, if I were going to go word by word, I'm going to go down to the store and get a Coke. Right. But then if you can't speak that slowly, so you say, I'm going to go down the store and get a Coke, Yeah. And so it's not, and this is off the cuff, and it may be a little bit more, a little less than somebody might like in their personal mix of the Delco accent. But in the end, it is superseded by the performance, so that if I'm teaching somebody how to do this and they are saying, I'm thinking too much about this. And this is, I'm speaking generally. I'm not talking about any specific actor. I want to be very careful as to not, I'm very respectful of the people that I work with and the work that they do and how hard it is. So I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but if they're like, you know what, I can't do that. Or I don't like that. If that doesn't feel natural, then we have to find something else. And in the end, you say, it's okay, because there are 5 people from the same family I interviewed, and they all sound completely different. So who am I to say you have to sound a certain way? So that's part of what I do. So it's yes to all of the sounds, and then specifically, how do I break them down? Somebody asked, and you can chime in on this, what sounds are particularly local? You mentioned a couple. One, of course, the O, which everybody talks about. Mm-hmm. The I is pretty prominent, and it's something that most people don't pick up on, like hike or night or life. And the sound in the oo sound is another one that most people don't notice. Like, you're not going to go, oh, that was weird, but people will say like spoon and afternoon, and it's a little tighter and a little like more right here. And I mean, you can add in that ass sound that we talked about.
Well, so there's the lots of places in the US will have a difference between man and Matt. But then in Philly and Delco, we pepper that in other additional places like last or path. And then we leave it out in some other places like hammer is the one example, or family sometimes, or camera.
Family, camera.
Yeah, yeah.
We use that word a lot because it's a
Family, I guess.
It's a story about families.
Yeah.
And another sound was the other thing is that it's not just vowel sounds. It's also the absence of consonant sounds. So a lot of people will say, instead of saying scented, a scented candle, they'll say a scented candle. And the L at the end of the word is almost an oo. So it's candle, like we would say eagle, right? So let me see if there's more things that people are saying.
I got one for you for the Philadelphia, for the guy from Philly. When I worked and lived in Philadelphia, the word that came to my mind that really sparked it when people said it. I look at a street sign, I see Girard Avenue, but it's Gerard.
Gerard. Yes.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Well, okay. It's Gerard, but it's market. And the colleges out of the city is Swarthmore, not Swarthmore, right? Even though there's an R in it. And we have a term for it called dissimilation, that lots of words, if they've got 2 R's in them, we drop one of them off. So corner for the street corner, or a quarter for a quarter. But that's going to be one of them also, Gerard. So 2 R's in a row, knock one of them out. That's too many R's.
Right. So that then becomes 2 R's in a row, Gerard, right? Gerard. So there's another word that's like that, Charlie. Everybody says Charlie. Nobody says the R in Charlie in this area, which is kind of funny. And I don't understand it. And we also say forest and Oregon instead of forest and Oregon. Forest. There were a lot of little things like that just, people would tell me, I would interview people and say, tell me what words you think you've got called out on, or you say a little differently than everyone else.
No, there's a thing that's old fashioned. I don't know if you would have coached them to do it all, is the sort of like iggles, liggle.
A little bit. That's actually, I found it in lots of people. I mean, a lot of people. So they, because it's Delco, I think. Because so I was talking to one guy and he was like, I had a colleague, and I was like, what? Yeah. Colleague? Good. It was extraordinary. And I was like, oh, that's great. Okay. It's not necessarily as pronounced. So I hear people will say really, or colleague, but it's not like, it's almost like there can be a little more English on something, like, when you're playing pool and they say put English on it, it's like somebody can put a little bit more oomph into it, and it's iggles, that cliche, but it still shows up, especially when people are speaking extemporaneously and quickly. The moment you give them a piece of paper to read, because sometimes I'd give them sentences or list words, it stops. Like, I was talking to one lady and she was like, I listed the days of the week, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And she was like, oh, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then in conversation, she's like, I work on Saturdays, and I was like, oh, you just did it, so.
Yeah. So that's great. The data set I was talking about before is a little bit, has some word lists, but what we really try to focus on when we're doing a sociolinguistic interview is to ask people questions that elicit a narrative of personal experience, asking people, what's something that happened to you one time? Tell me the A and then B and then C and then D. And the idea is people get caught up in the importance of the details of the story and telling the story, that they get less caught up in exactly how they're speaking. Right. So questions like, do you ever get blamed for something you didn't do? You need to get people warmed up before these are good questions, right? But, or
was my favorite.
Did you ever have a dream? Yeah. Did you ever have a dream and then it came true?
I love people, so it's nice to talk to them.
Yeah,
I have
that's
a
great.
couple of other things. One thing I remember from my father-in-law, he would say fantastic, fantastic, and he would
Fantastic.
say gas, like with a Z on the end, local
Gas.
Philly,
Yeah,
older
yeah, yeah,
And my mom would
yes.
always say refrigerator,
refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
refrigerator. No, it was never a refrigerator. It was
Refrigerator.
always the refrigerator.
Hmm.
Yeah.
This is great. I mean, I'm looking at the chat. You guys are on fire out there. I don't even think we can get through all of these. One of the other quotes I got off the show was, and it's so perfect to what we're saying, is he's not from round here. You know, it's
Yeah,
just that perfect example.
round here.
Cutting the A off of
Right.
around.
That
Why would you
sound,
even-
that's one of my favorite sounds. That ow sound that you talked about, Joseph.
Down. Yeah.
Down, favorite. I know that's so
Yeah.
weird. It's very goofy, but I'm a nerd.
I have a question.
My
That mimicked in any other accents that you've encountered? Like that,
What?
that O
could you
sound,
repeat that?
is
Oh,
that
Sam.
mimicked in any other accents that you've encountered?
Are you asking Joseph or me?
I guess I'm asking both of you.
So I'll jump in. I think Joseph also alluded to this, that it's a Southern sound, a little bit of a Southern sound. So where we are, I think it's called a mid-Atlantic accent. It sort of stretches across it, like the diagram that he had up in the beginning. And sometimes I've heard it referred to as a Northern mid-Atlantic accent. So here where we are, we have the North coming South and the South coming North. And that's why it's such a weird accent, and why it's, I think,
Yeah.
taken hold right now, because people are like, wow, that's really strange. Or interesting, let's put it that. That's really interesting. So when you add a little bit more length to that sound and perhaps a little bit more music, it might be like, so, oh, Villanova might become Villanova. So now it's a little bit different because it's got a little bit of music to it, and that's sort of the South coming North. And that's one of the difficulties when you're teaching an accent, is if it goes a little bit farther one way or a little bit farther another way, you might sound Irish, or you might sound Southern or from somewhere else. So it's, for me, when I was working with people, I would say, like, think of the sound and the inflection not coming from pitch but from volume, like the importance of in a sentence, so that that the length isn't too long, and that the sound is coming right out of your face, right out of the front of your face, as opposed to being sort of up here in the hard palate. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is really fascinating. I had one question, like, why is it that when people get around other people with accents or travel to a different place, you know, you start picking up on an accent and you start saying things like, I don't know if either of you have any.
Yeah, it was a curse. Joseph?
Well, yeah, it's maybe not as much accent stuff, although, you know what, I started saying not just water but water when I was living in Edinburgh, because, you know, partially to get people to understand me, but also partially because it's just, that's just a tendency you have. That's just a tendency, and some people are more prone to it than others. It was really weird, you know, for a while when we were living there, it would be just me and my wife at home, and my wife's from Connecticut, and we would start saying things like, "Are you gonna Hoover?" or
Yeah,
or, you know, put the pots on the hob, and here's two Americans. It's just the two of us
Right.
there,
right.
using British words for these home things, just because it's what
You're there.
it's what happens. You're there,
Yeah.
and you sort of pick up on it. Yeah.
So I would say that it's also our need to, I mean, why are we even doing this? Why are we talking about this? Why did they make a movie, a television show? Why do you love language? And why do you want people to love the way they speak? It's because we are creatures of connection, and we want to connect and belong. So we have a longing to be a part of this group, whatever it is. And as you, for many of us, without even trying, as you're around someone else, the mimicry starts happening unrequested, right? So for me, when I was young, I would be like, oh my gosh, they're going to think that I'm making fun of them. And I just didn't even know I was doing that, you know? And of course, that's why I ended up in this business. But for example, my sister who, and you mentioned this earlier, she moved to North Carolina. And after a while, she was like, oh, Sue, I don't know. Why are you, you know, sort of Southern, coastal Southern thing going on? And I was
Picking
like,
up y'all, which is just, it's just handy.
Right. And I was like, why are you talking like that? And she's like, why? What do you mean? Everybody down here says I sound like a Yankee. And she'd come home and everybody up at home would say she sounds like a Southerner. So it's part of belonging. And it's also super fun. I used to pretend to do different accents at every table when I was waiting tables. That was always fun. See if I could keep it together, you know, and not slip across country lines and things like that. So
as a community
I have a
journalist.
question. We have a raised hand from John Calvec. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Oh, hey. Hey, yeah, it's John Calway. Actually, I had a question. I was wondering, what is the difference between a Philly accent and a Delco accent, if any?
Well, I don't know if I could answer that in terms of systematic differences. And part of the reason I would struggle to answer that is also because while there's been a lot of research on the city of Philadelphia, partially because William LeBeau, who was my PhD supervisor, was an active researcher of the accent for 40 years. Not as much work branching out into Delco, and I'm just not as familiar with it. I'd imagine a lot of the broad strokes are going to be the same, but maybe there's some closer differences between them. And I think, Suzanne, you're the closest to it, having listened to tapes and
well, and I had, you know, in the beginning, so on some level, they sound very, very similar, right? But you will notice like maybe there's more nasality in a North Philadelphia accent, you know, so it's more, that's more nasal. There are people who will swear that Philadelphians don't actually say the O, but they do, but they say it a little bit less, so it less strongly. Most in general, currently, the people who are living there now don't say whom or whose, right? Yeah. They're going to go, and I will notice it, but they don't think they're doing it. So they say home, I'm going to go home, and get a hose and go to Villanova. Whereas in Delco, they'll say, I'm going to go home, get a hose and go to Villanova, you know?
So that O was another one of these sounds that we heard, that we saw moving in the one direction and then turning back around in Philly. So so that would make some sense. I don't know if those turnarounds happen in the same way in Delco.
Right. And it's also true that it's not part of the African-American vernacular. And I will also say that in Delco, what I notice is really that placement right here. You know what I'm saying? Like if you get somebody who's got a real strong accent, that's like, it's like right in the front of the nose, right on the, like, feels like it's, I think somebody said, it's like there's something going on with the front of your face, you know, like there's something right here and it's like tickling your nose or something. And you're like moving around. Now that's pretty strong. So I'm taking it to almost the caricature level there to kind of demonstrate that. But I think that's also a thing that's very, the R too. So here's another thing that's sort of a Southern thing, I think, moving up, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So in Delco, and less so, I think, in Philadelphia, there's a real reach for the R. So hark, dark, you know, it's really dark out, you know, I'm going to go far. So it's very strong, actually. So that's.
Well, R is one of these interesting ones where it's a little hard to study without like scientifically or whatever, without having an ultrasound machine under somebody's jaw to actually see their tongue moving around.
See where the tongue is going, whether it's mostly it's the back of the tongue for us.
but that might be part of what it also is. Like maybe there's like a tongue tip up versus tongue tip down difference between the two places. That's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, or just a little. Sometimes I also think like, am I noticing what's happening in the jaw? Because if the jaw is incrementally more open, it's going to change the sound somewhat. Some of the women, one of the women that I interviewed she was actually from Ridley. Somebody asked, is there a difference between North Delco and South Delco? There's actually like such loyalty to your area. I didn't notice a difference between one section and another. This woman was actually talking about the L. She's like, I always feel like I'm trying to say an L in everything I'm saying. So there's like one of the other weird things is that we add an L at the end of a AW sound. Like I saw it instead of in New York, my mom would say, I saw it.
I love
or in
that.
British, they'd say, I saw it, right?
Yeah.
But here we add an L. It's so.
That's how it works.
Now. Yeah, how. It's a nice cow, like a cow. Come on.
So that is something I know about, but I don't hear it that often in Philly anyway.
Right.
And not as much in the recordings we have.
Nice.
But
I could send you my recordings.
That would be great, because I would love to work on it, because this is some inside baseball, but there's a particular claims people have made that get a little messed up if you say you can also do an intrusive L instead of just intrusive R. I can't get into details because it would bore everybody.
It's academic, right?
Yeah, but
I'm surprised there's 200 people here listening to this right
now. If it supports my beef, then I will take it up.
Hey, I want to share with you that I used to take a lot of pictures until someone told me that you better stop taking pictures. It's pictures. I can't say that word. So our accents kind of locked in because so many words are so difficult for us to speak over time.
It's the neuromuscular memory. So it's almost autonomic when you speak. So when you're saying something and you say, this is what I do with actors, right? So you come in and you say pictures, and now you've got to say pictures, right? So and you're like, I can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You just have to go really slowly. And first we do prep work, right? So we're massaging your face, stretching your mouth out, open the soft palate, stretch your tongue, get the body ready to do something new. So especially a lot of tongue work and tongue tension. Doing all things to get everything relaxed and ready, to get the breath to do it. Picture. It's actually picture, the way we'd say it in the United States. So some things like we don't say water, we say water.
Yeah.
We don't say the T. It's just not said here. In Scotland, they have a really robust attack on consonants, which if you're working with somebody from another country like Scotland or England and or London, and you're trying to get them to do an American accent, you've got to teach them not to have a robust attack on a consonants. They've got to say, they can't say water. You can't even say what. You've got to say what,
What? Yeah.
Right. So if you're doing something that's a period piece, or you're doing something that's more posh, or you're doing, The Great Gatsby, perhaps you can add in that sort of articulation. So all of it's all this is in the work that I do. It's all about what's possible and what's applicable, right? And then in real life, Stefan, if you say picture, or here we say picture, right? That's the problem, right? So I'm going to take a picture, and no, it's not a pitcher of water, it's a picture. So that is practice with the K sound. So that's getting your jaw open. It's all these little things that we do to get the body to work in the way that we want it to, more efficiently, and to get out of our own neuromuscular patterns.
See, but you do that because you're on projects where you're trying to maintain a certain dialect.
Yeah.
When
Otherwise,
I don't
nobody
have-
cares. Nobody
Exactly.
cares.
I don't want people to hear me say picture. I
No,
just feel some kind
Please
of way
don't
about
say that. And if
And
somebody
don't.
tells you to say picture, tell them to stop. I mean, we could find some choice Philadelphia insults, but which maybe should be another show, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, there's an interesting,
here's a word, friggin', right?
Yeah. We haven't talked that much about particular words, but there's some interesting stuff there. People are talking about, I'm gonna tap Mac.
Yeah.
Instead of
Get
going
it,
to
get
the
it,
ATM.
get a bath instead
Yeah.
of take a bath.
Yeah.
Towel.
Towel. Yeah, that's a good one. I think it is my L nexus
Mm-hmm.
that gets me the most misunderstood in the world, in my own house. Yeah.
That's funny. Are there any more questions in here?
I got one for Joseph.
Yes.
Why do people take your classes?
Why do people take my? Because I'm a fun guy.
Okay. Well, sign me up.
A handful of reasons. Well, right now I'm teaching interlinguistics, not just about this stuff, but all sorts of things. How do we build up the structure of sentences? How do we build up the structure of words? We learn about the IPA, which is a specific transcription system for writing down all
No,
these
that's a
sounds.
beer.
No,
Well,
it's
yeah,
not.
I know.
International Phonetic Alphabet.
Oh, okay.
International
Thank you.
Phonetic Alphabet, yeah.
Mhm.
Not an India Pale Ale.
But also, I have a background in doing sort of detailed quantitative statistical analysis. So if you want to learn how to use the R programming language and make graphs and animations like I had before, I also teach you that kind of stuff.
Can I add something in, Stefan? The same reason people take his class, for the same reason you had 200 people sign up for this
That is
session
absolutely
today.
true.
Because it's fascinating, and it is that language is the thing that connects us. It's the thing that gets us from inside of ourselves to inside of someone else, with the possibility of penetrating their being so that they will respond to us differently. And that's what, and understand us or accept us or engage with us. And that's why when people are so fascinated about learning about their own history, their own sound. Oh, is this a derivative of Irish? Yeah, pike might come from pike, like an Irish accent, right? Mm-hmm. Or some of the A sounds might come from there. And then beyond that, if you're learning about how does language develop, how does language happen? Why do we have words that are single syllable words? And why are those words so impactful, like stop or love or hate? And why do we have words like synchronistic, and what does that mean? Or why do we have a tree in a bush? Those are why language is so fascinating to me.
Well, listen,
I want to take your class.
Hold it, gang. Hold it. You're going to get the last say though, Joe. Okay. But I just want to say that was so beautifully delivered. That was like language connects us. I'm looking for a way to stop this thing. I wish it could go another hour. We still have a lot of people hanging on here, hanging on to every word. That's what we're talking about here. You like that little thing there? Word. But listen, I don't know how to gracefully get out of here because I don't want this to end. Usually I'm trying to figure out how do we end this? We're not going to go much longer. I've learned big words. I've learned how words are used, how they're spoken. I've got a higher level of appreciation for actors, thanks to you, Susan, tonight.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Suzanne, I'm sorry. Suzanne. Okay. You should see how they butcher Stefan. So we're in that same boat.
I understand.
Shibboleth, I learned that word tonight, and dissimulation. That's really fascinating. I'm gonna take that home. I'm gonna give you guys just like the last word, the last say. So Joe, he's like chomping at the bit to say something. So go ahead, give it up.
Well, all I was gonna say was, if I think back to what got me into linguistics, in the first place. I went to Penn because it was like a good school in the area and I got in. And I happened to take intro to linguistics and it was like an epiphanal moment. There's a lot of great books out there. Read up on it if you're interested. And definitely, I think Suzanne put it better than I could really. But yeah, the way you speak is the way you present yourself to the world, and is how you feel about yourself. And so do it, there's two ways you could respond to somebody telling you to don't say picture. You can try to contort yourself to fit what people are telling you how you ought to speak, or stick with it and it will change the world and people will stop telling you to change, which is the future I'm aiming for. So, speak with pride.
Yes, speak with pride. What a very engaged group of people. You have hundreds of messages here. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you, Stefan, and thank you, Joseph, for nerding out with me.
Thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the organizers. Yeah.
Boy, if this is nerding out, I need to do it every week. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I took acting classes just to find out what's so fascinating. Why are we so enamored with acting? So you have.
I'll come down and do a workshop with you guys, or do a Zoom workshop on voice and acting if you would like. Just let me know.
We are going to take her up on that, Erica.
Yeah,
Lori, right?
Just let me know.
Board of
You guys
directors.
were
I know
really
you have out there.
delightful and you spent a lot of time helping me. Be happy to do it.
Oh,
So
thank
I'm going to pass this over to, there she is. Hi, Erica. Close us out.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to thank both of you. This has been so fascinating. And we have a recording of this, so it's going to live on our website. And I would love to
Dear God.
do something like this again, just based off of the interest here. And I want to direct people to our website, padelcohistory.org. We have, postings on our upcoming programs. You can learn more about the Museum and Research Library. We're located in Chester on Avenue of the States, across from Chester City Hall. And we are a nonprofit. So if you enjoyed what you saw tonight, please consider making a donation. And we're around. Give us a call if you ever have any questions or want to do research. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you. So let's everybody say good night in their own accent. I'm going to start.
Love that.
Good night.
Everyone come off mute.
Night.
Good 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 night.
Night.
Good night.
This is fabulous.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, I just sent a direct message to somebody named Thomas.
Right.
I meant to put my email in the chat. So if anybody wanted to reach me, it's my name at gmail.com. So if anybody has any questions, that was super dumb. Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Yo, see you later. See you later. Oh, we didn't even get into use.
I hope you had a good day.
Go Birds.
You guys are the best.
You guys are the best. Yeah, let's go get a beer. Right? Oh, God,
That was
so
great.
funny.
Yeah.
All right.
Go Birds.
Go bird.
Go Birds. Go Eagles.
Oh, well, I hope we can do this again. This has been so fun.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
definitely has. Yeah.
I'm happy to do, I literally am happy to do an hour and a half class for people if they want to like play around. I don't know how much acting work we would do, but it would be fun.
Yeah, we can hear your other accents. I was so fascinated when you came in and you're like, just mentioned some different accents that you did. And I was like, wow, you just switched between one to the other. And it was just very, very.
Well, I mean, honestly, that kind of stuff is almost, it's like a parlor trick kind of, because you can say, I've got an Irish accent. Now he's doing a Scottish accent, not a Russian accent like this, right? But those are like 4 or 5 words. That's a cliche kind of thing. So when you're really working on that accent, there's a whole another many layers of depth that you get into. So sometimes I see people on like social media and they'll do like 15 accents. These are all the, and they're showing off, which is totally fun and cool, but it doesn't mean.
But if I put a script in front of you,
Yeah, right.
could you do the whole thing? Yeah.
Right. And doing it with meaning, you know. So it's a process. I have a lot of fun, and I certainly do love to play around with it anyway. So
okay, well, I'm gonna sign out. Thank you.
Goodbye,
everybody.
Stefan. Not Stefan. Joseph, I might email you a question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, and next time you're trying to work on in Philly, the expert person on that is in my Rolodex. So
all right, thank you.
yes.
And I want to send you my files on now.
Yeah, cool. Great. Great.
Bye.
Awesome.
See ya.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
See ya.
Good night.